We continue in this part of the book of Proverbs with these maxims. There were 30 maxims altogether in this section, which correspond to something in the Egyptian wisdom literature we spoke about last time or the time before, maybe the time before. And although this coming section, which is we'll cover today and next week as well, our continuation of the rest of those 30 maxims being 4 or 5 liners that are easy to delineate as a unit, as a literary unit, sometimes connected to each other. We'll talk about something going forward. Um, there, unlike what we did last week, I think it was the week before, because what we did the week before, where we kind of matched the maxims to their parallel in the Egyptian wisdom tradition. In this case, we don't have those parallels. We've got something actually different and I think even, yeah, we have something a little bit different that we'll talk about in a second. A little bit less text than usual today, and then we'll finish up this section next week. Yeah, okay. I stopped asking, but I used to remember. I remember I used to begin every session with, "Are there any questions or reflections on what we did last week?" Assuming anybody remembers what we did last week or the week before. Okay, Rita Claire, it's good to see you're with us. I hope you're feeling better. Great, wonderful, wonderful. Okay, so Rita, do you feel like reading, Rita Claire?
Sure.
Okay, we're at section chapter 23, verses 12 to 14.
Apply your mind to discipline and your ears to wise sayings. Do not withhold discipline from children. If you beat them with a rod, they will not die. Beat them with a rod, and you will save them from the Orov. Orov? Am I pronouncing that right?
From the grave?
Oh, from the grave. Oh, sorry. I didn't see the G. My eyes are a little.
Right. And also the line is joined with the bottom of the G in this particular font. Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. So Rita Claire, you being the our resident expert at raising children and grandchildren and great grandchildren and many of them, you usually have a reflection about how this applies to the family unit. Here it's specifically addressed to a family unit. I don't know if everybody agrees, but according to Fox's reading here, and it makes sense that this is the father talking to his son about his children. So this is a multi-generational situation here of 3 generations, and the father begins by saying, be mindful of discipline. Discipline is important. Then it gets a little sticky, right? Any comments, or anybody, Rita, or anybody else?
Well, in my personal opinion and experience, uh, I I was never disciplined with a rod, perhaps because I didn't need that. But with my children, there have been times when their father would, and I did not like that. But it is true, they will not die. But I definitely feel that children they want discipline.
Okay. And let's also remember we're talking about many years ago, many decades ago, right? Things that are far less acceptable today in society, the society we live in. Things that were not so acceptable when we were raising children that perhaps I'm embarrassed about when it came to discipline, but certainly not acceptable in our daughters' um, what I relate to here is this idea of sharing with your child how best to raise their child. Um, I may be the only one in this situation here, or maybe not. I don't know, but I'm not allowed to say anything. Well, I guess maybe others are here. I'm not allowed to say anything to my children, my daughters, about how they raise their children. Um, I mean, maybe I'm not allowed to say anything, but my words of wisdom or otherwise are certainly not welcome. And and I guess I would imagine also they were less welcome. I don't remember my mother of blessed memory saying much about how we discipline the kids, but certainly my father And while I listened to him, and I never said, "Don't you dare tell me how to raise my children," we didn't have that kind of relationship. I will say that it did bother me, of course, nobody, yeah. And so I see that dynamic, with some of our daughters. But um, so, Eileen, do you want to say something?
Well, neither Art nor I would ever say anything about the way the kids raise their children.
Mhm.
I mean, my son and daughter-in-law are stricter than my daughter and son-in-law, but in either case, they're their kids. Unless we saw something horrible happening, we wouldn't say a word.
Yeah.
True.
Yeah.
Yeah. My thing is that none of them are close to as strict as I was with them, and I don't think I was very strict with them. But it's issues of boundaries and behavior in public spaces and um, cleaning up. It's a bunch of things, eating. Anyway, but
Yeah.
this is very specific here. This is about punishment or discipline in general. It's in general. And then Rita Claire, you went a particular direction with this. Your understanding was that it won't kill them.
Yes.
Right. Okay. Now, there is another way to understand it. In other words, if you were just reading, do not withhold discipline from your children. If you beat them with a rod, they will not die. That would
Mhm.
be fine. But then, in the context of the next line, beat them with a rod, and you will save them for the grave. Is there another layer or
There
another?
or no.
Oh, but we got this. The Madalena, did you hear we had a little echo there? Does everybody have echo? No, I don't
Yeah.
know what happened there. Okay.
My experience as far as the rod is concerned, you don't ever beat your children. if you if you spank them on the behind, they definitely are not going to die. Um, I remember my girlfriend who was very close to would bring her children to visit, and she would go home and try to discipline her kids the way that my children's father disciplined our children, and she said it didn't work for her. Is
Okay.
you
But
know it you have to do what works best for your own family.
okay, now I'm going to bring you back though to the question that I asked Rita Claire. How
Okay,
do you
so
understand beat them with a rod and you will save them from the grave?
oh yeah, I understand that to for them to to understand why the discipline was administrated. I think they need to understand that and appreciate the value of it and accept it.
Okay. Eileen, were you about to say something?
No, it seems to me like it means save them from doing evil, which will lead them to
Yes,
the grave.
yes, yes.
In
Thank
other
you.
words,
Thank
yeah,
you.
in other words, if you don't discipline your child who is about to walk into the busy street,
Right.
and in early days that meant giving them a smack,
Hmm.
then if you don't, then they're going to do something dangerous, whether it is a ethical danger kind of thing. In other words, they're going to do something that will end up getting them killed by heaven because they've done something wrong in the eyes of God, in God's eyes, or whether they've done something wrong just because they haven't they haven't behaved properly around rough people, violent people. Yeah. Yeah.
I have to tell you something I think that's kind of funny. This is about one of my granddaughters. My daughter
My
had
daughter had
told, oh, there is an echo. My,
Hold on.
my, my daughter had told my granddaughter, you wait till your father comes home, you're going to get a spanking. So what she did was she took all the panties out of her drawer and put all her panties on, to save herself from being hurt too much when she got her spanking. I thought that was kind of funny.
Okay. All right. Anything else on this section before we look at the parallel?
I kind of like Rita's first reading where she said, "Save them from the rave." Raves were sordid underground musical events. in the 70s and 80s.
They still are today, Richard.
Oh, are they? See, I forgot. I went to one or two myself, I must say. And
This is revealing. Oh, we
yeah,
want to hear more.
no, you don't want to hear.
Right. Underground raves, a music festival out in the forest and stuff like that. You still
Yeah.
have, at least in Israel, it still happens. Um, and so, yeah, and you'll save them from the rave, right? Okay. So here we have an interesting thing today. The source today is from the Proverbs of Achikar. There's also you'll find the story of Achikar. This is a really interesting literary topic from ancient Near Eastern literature. Some have said that Achikar, you find Achikar mentioned in many different places in Egypt, between Egypt and the land of Israel. You find in ancient Jewish literature here from, I'm pretty sure we'll find out from the book of Tobit is the name Achikar. It's his nephew. I mentioned the book of Tobit now, which is Tovia. Because we are going to be studying that. I had Steve Kinney and I reached the conclusion that we've decided we'd like to do something which is known it used to be known as intertestamental literature between the Old Testament and the New Testament, the apocryphal literature. That's a challenging term, intertestamental, for reasons that I've spoken about before, perhaps Old Testament versus New Testament. But it's a book that was sacred to the Alexandrian Jewish community and hence is in the Septuagint, the Greek translation of the Tanakh. Um, and so we're gonna be studying that. We probably won't start until, in fact, we won't start until the 1st of January for various reasons. But we're looking forward to a different kind of a study, and it's a study which is it's not normative literature, and it's also it's not normative Christian literature. It kind of lies in between. And what might we find out about that area that I don't know what we're going to do. Madalena, are you with us? So I guess the only way we can do this is everybody mutes when they're not speaking. Sorry about that. And I'll try to do that as well. In any case, the name Achikar, which has the shorish chakar, chet kuf resh, which is to look into something, to dig into something, to research something in modern Hebrew. Is a name associated with wisdom. So we have from Egypt, we also have from Mesopotamia as well, in different languages. And the language that this is translated from is from a papyrus from a place called Elephantine, which is in the Upper Nile. Upper Nile is not the Northern Nile; it's the Southern Nile. Maybe it's not the Upper Nile. In any case, it's in the Nile. It was an island called Elephantine. Probably mentioned it before because there was a Jewish garrison stationed there. It was a Jewish settlement in the 5th and 4th centuries BCE. And they used Aramaic, which is called, I think it's Royal Aramaic, I think the term is Royal Aramaic. It was the lingua franca of the entire area. And so we have these documents that were found, these papyri, which have been preserved, that are written in Aramaic. And there's connections between that community and Jerusalem asking to do sacrifices outside of the temple. There's a document about a woman who who institutes divorce against her husband. She divorces her husband. She's a wealthy woman. I know something about this because you kind of know in biblical literature about this, but I had a class with Professor Bezalel Porton, who I think passed away in this last year, Buzzy Porton. And he was a really, really interesting lecturer, but not a very good lecturer. He was an interesting scholar. Did a lot of really interesting work he was one of the foremost experts on this very, very specific kind of literature from this particular place. But his lectures were difficult to get through. But a good man and a fun guy. I got a chance to talk to him a little bit, and many of my friends know him because he was kind of a scholar in residence for many years at Camp Ramah in Wisconsin. But Salil Porton. Anyway, and I have some of his books or his readers someplace, I think, and I would have liked to have gone back to them, but of course they're in boxes in the garage, which you will hear about forever, but probably never actually hear that I found. I'm not about to start taking down the boxes and look through stuff. In any case, that's what we have here. Rita, if you could read this particular proverb, and if we'll all think of this and the proverb we just read here. No, just unmute, please.
Do not keep your son from the rod. If you are not able to save him from wickedness, my print didn't come out really clear. If I beat you, my son, you will not die. And if I leave you to your own heart, you will not live.
Okay, that's the way the three dots there are on purpose. Means there's a break in the text, but we get the gist of it from that. It's very, very similar. Don't keep the rod don't keep your son from the rod. In this case, it's the Achikar is talking, I think, to his adopted son in the scheme of things here. This is a proverb from Achikar, but there's a wonderful story that goes with it as well. Perhaps we'll look at that when we study Tobit, the book of Tobit. But for our purposes right now, you've got this parallel, which is more or less the same thing. We've had something similar in Proverbs before, right? Don't spare the rod, spare the whatever, the expression that came out in English. Um, and but here is, if you beat your son, you will not die. Excuse me. He says, if I beat you, you will not die. So it's him talking to his son or his adopted son, as opposed to our book of Proverbs, which is a father talking to his son about his children. Okay.
David's
Yes.
Elephantine is part of the city of Aswan in Upper Egypt.
Upper Egypt, which means southern part, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so it is Upper Nile. Yeah, the reason it's called Elephantine, which Sasha mentioned, in Hebrew it's called Yev. Yev comes from the same word as ivory. It was an Elephantine. It was the place that was known for bringing in the import of ivory from Africa. And a Jewish garrison there. Interesting. Look up Elephantine. It's if you're interested in this kind of stuff, Dan, I know you are in history. I didn't mean for you to look it up right now, of course, but go ahead. Um, it's a really interesting chapter in Jewish history. Not well known, not well known at all. And it was one of the first lessons that I got. I think my class with Professor Porton was probably 85. It was, or maybe even 83 or 84. It was when I was in my bachelor. So it was 82, it was 83, maybe 83, 84. And suddenly I realized there's a whole world of ancient Judaism that or my people, we know nothing about. We didn't learn about it in the yeshiva. I didn't learn about it in high school. And they spoke Aramaic, and they offered sacrifices. They got permission from the temple in Jerusalem to offer sacrifices. Who heard of offering a sacrifice outside of it was a real eye opener for me. So I encourage people to look into this. And there's yet another topic for a mini course, right, on the community of Elephantine. Okay. Anything else on this?
Yeah, what I was struck by is how attitudes have changed in our lifetime about corporal punishment for children and the rightness of it. That I'm thinking, I don't show myself, so I don't have a comparison on that, but wasn't hit by my parents, but the threat was always there and was used verbally as a possibility, even though they didn't do it. And that would be unthinkable, I think, for people of my generation.
Right.
So, and I've heard I can think of a couple of sources where the change in attitude is laid to, in a negative way, overeducation.
Overeducation.
That people would, the generation before me would say, you think it's unthinkable because you're overeducated.
Yeah, look, and it's connected to wokeism as well. About criticizing anything, other cultures, other judgmentalism. It's a tricky thing. It's a tricky thing. Yeah. And there's legal issues as well in different countries, depending on the country. Yeah. Okay.
I was going to say that my husband was a school teacher. He started out at elementary school, and my daughter just retired from teaching, and she taught middle school, and it is shocking some of the stories that she has told me. I just can't imagine children acting that way in my day. We just we didn't dare. We were afraid of the principal, who was maybe 5 feet tall. He was very short in stature, but we were afraid of him. So it's just like you just said, Dan, that you didn't, just the thought of being disciplined was enough.
Okay. All right. Shall we move on? Klaus, good to see you. Glad you're feeling well enough to be with us. Eileen, you want to read 15 to 16?
Sure. My son, if your mind gets wisdom, my mind too will be gladdened. I shall rejoice with all my heart when your lips speak right things.
All right, so here's something positive, right? It's not, there's no negative aspect there. It's all positive reinforcement. Um, Turning to his son, in this case, son to father to son. We'll see, though, of course, as it always does, at some point, mothers will come up here, right? Not in this particular passage. And the usage of different body parts that we've seen many times before, the lev, the heart, or the mind, right? The translation of the mind translates here, lev, libecha, your mind, literally your heart. And my heart will be gladdened. So the most up-to-date translation has gone from the literal to the metaphorical use, I guess. And then also your kidneys, or here it says, this is interesting. I shall rejoice with all my heart. Heart is lev, usually, and klayot are kidneys. And we have that. Bochen klayot, God is the one who examines kidneys. It's what we would call kishkis. Kishka is a place of knowledge, place of wisdom. But yeah, okay. And then yes, okay. That's and then the lips. So there's the heart, the kidneys, the lips, or in this case, the mind, the heart, and the lips. Okay. Anything on this? Yes.
Yeah. Well, I think this puts the burden on the son to please his father, and it's possible that, I mean, you can be a good son emotionally, but you might not be a wise son. You might not have that type of intelligence. And I think it's burdensome on a child to want to please the parent when they, for that reason, for being intellectual, I just think wisdom has many parts to it. And the
Mhm.
way this is written, I think puts a burden on a kid.
Yeah, and again, that's the difference of generations and ages we live in. But putting a
Right,
burden on a child in ancient times is not a bad thing in any way, and it can
right,
actually be good. That's how society preserves itself and keeps itself moving on by putting burden. And the truth is, we do it one way or another. I think
right,
that's a little bit of so. I think that's a little. I'm not sure how true it is when I don't want, not judging parents, but parents will come out and say, um, there are expectations no matter what. And
right,
if it's not expectations of going to Harvard or getting a PhD or making a lot of money, it's another kind of expectation.
right.
Um, yeah.
I think we know that current educational literature will tell you that children do better when there is not 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 discipline, but routine. And routine can be related to discipline, depending upon how you want to enact it,
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
So I don't
Okay, good.
know.
Anything else? But it just back, I think you, of course, are happy when your kids and your grandchildren are showing wisdom and common sense.
Oh, of course.
Successful, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
As
But
you were probably with report cards. I mean, there was a sea change in my life. I've shared with you before, and my brother's very open about this. When I was 12, my brother Mark was 15. He ran away from home on Yom Kippur. We went to shul. He refused to go to shul. We come back from shul. There's a note saying, "I need some space." It may not have been that phrase, but it was something like that. And my parents rightfully panicked, or not panicked, but they were very concerned. And my father had a friend, Larry Craig, of blessed memory, who was a private eye my father used in his. My dad did divorce work, and I remember because Larry Craig had a revolver that I don't know if I was supposed to see, or I don't think he showed it to me. I think I saw it once, but he was packing. Anyway, he sent Larry Craig up to Haight-Ashbury to look for him, to other places they did. And I think my dad maybe went with him part of it. I don't know. It's a little bit blurry, but anyway, my brother comes back after 3 weeks of being away. He had hitchhiked in the end to Tacoma, Washington. He came back down, and everything kind of changed in the house. My parents went to a PET, Parent Effectiveness Training. Some of you may remember that, and so I didn't have to get a haircut. So how it had impacted my life was I didn't have to get a haircut anymore. So I had long hair when I was 13. For my bar mitzvah, I've got big, bushy haircut. I think, and by the time I was 14, it was down to my belt, and that's my parents were very permissible. Were very permissive. My brother used to smoke grass down in the playroom with his friends when he was in high school, and my parents knew it. So there was a real change. But I'm saying that then it became until that time, report cards were a big deal, and after that time, the conversation usually with my father was, "Well, how do you feel about the grade? You got to see, you got to do. How do you feel about it? What do you feel about it?" Which is a direct, outcome of their parent effectiveness training kind of thing. So, yeah, and afterwards, I think there was more of an expectation. I felt certainly an expectation from my father, less so from my mother, about academic achievement. Yeah, and fundraising, doing well at fundraising. That was his passion. Okay. All right. You want to read another one for us, 17 to 18?
do not envy sinners in your heart, but only those who fear God at all times. For when you have a future and your hope will never fail.
Okay. Particular comments? Sinner envy is a thing, right? Because hanacha, the assumption here is that people who sin, people who cheat, they get ahead and they get stuff. That's because that's what people see. People see if you cheat on your taxes, you cheat in unethical business practices, you make more money. Just as an example. So even though you see that they're succeeding, don't envy them in your hearts, but instead recognize that the ultimate judge of this life, and at some point in the Jewish tradition, the world to come. I'm not in the book of Proverbs, but the ultimate judge is, of course, Kadosh Baruch Hu, and Santa Claus with the list kind of a thing. What's interesting to me here is this achrit v'tikva, which I seem to remember for someplace else. The key words of the third and fourth lines. You'll have a future. If you want a future, well, I'm sorry. You could explain it as if there's going to be a future, that wouldn't match up with the second line. So the translation here is the best. Yeah, for then you will have a future. So the future is achrit. We discussed the other day achrita yamim in one of the things we were studying together, the end of days, but it's not the end of. It's in Micah, in the class of Micah. It's all right. Achrita yamim is often translated the end of days, but future is actually that's what's that was the older translation. Today, achrit means has to do with future, other, or the days that come after, but not the end days that come afterwards, after from now. And tikva, of course, is hope, and I think people know that the national anthem of Israel, which is being discussed in many circles, far more circles today than it was when I was first um, uh, aware of the challenges that Hatikva as a national anthem have for a huge percentage of the population who is not Jewish. Tikva, of course, means hope. Okay. Anything on this? Okay, Richard, you want to read 1921?
Listen, my son, and get wisdom. Lead your mind in a proper path. Do not do not be of those who guzzle wine or glut themselves on meat, for gustlers and gluttons will be impoverished, and drowsy will clothe you in tatters.
Okay. How do you understand this?
Drowsiness will clothe you in tatters.
So how do you understand this, Richard?
How do I understand it?
Yeah.
Don't overeat.
As a wine, as a a wine guzzler and beef
Yeah.
glut.
Well, yeah. Um, well, you'll lose all your money. You'll be impoverished.
Okay, because of spending on these I mean, it costs money for
It
alcohol.
costs money, and also then if you're drunk and sleepy from overeating, you won't be able to work to make money.
Right? Or you'll be lying in the street and they'll steal your clothes from you or whatever. Or yeah,
Right.
exactly. So there's that dual kind of thing going on here together against this whole section from verse 19, which we started now, until the section we'll finish next week to verse 35 is kind of it's kind of an essay or a lesson against what's the word, debauchery. And so we're only doing some of them today because I needed to cut off at the end of the second page, but I wanted to bring some rabbinic literature, which we haven't done for a while so much.
Except things I don't think things like this are very helpful.
Okay.
Because it's like Nancy Reagan saying, just say no. It's like you have a platitude. I mean, you call them maxims, but they're really platitudes. And it doesn't go to the problem. It doesn't, I mean, if somebody is a glutton or an alcoholic, just saying don't do it because the consequence of doing it is negative is not going to stop the person. There's some underlying problem that needs to be dealt with.
Right. So that we know today, certainly in the last 100 years, a little bit more since Freud, not just, but since Freud. And 12-step programs and treatment and therapy are all part of that. And it's a much more complicated thing. But think of pre-modern times or pre-Freudian times, it really was, either you have freedom of will, if either you're being weak, you haven't exercised your judgment properly. In other words, you have agency. If you're a man, if a woman, it's a different story. Or you've been possessed by Satan in other cultures. Right. So you're right. This doesn't help people who have an addiction issue. This is way too simple. But do we have any data on how just say no type campaigns have worked or not worked amongst children? Like I don't really know. My guess is like yours, Richard. It didn't work at all. But
Didn't work. Yeah, it was a failure.
yeah, and
The
we
whole
know that
campaign,
science.
the whole campaign was a failure.
I mean, because people are still using drugs.
Yeah, I mean, you just don't. It ignores the problem,
Hmm.
and I find it. I mean, I wasn't there, so I don't know in the ancient world. I mean, I'm not a historian, but it just seems to me that common sense would have told even ancient people that just say no doesn't work when a family member has a problem that it required something more than just saying don't do it.
Okay. One might answer that the first two lines connect this to a much wider project of musar, of discipline. In other words, it's not just the issue, it's not just alcohol and gluttony. It's in general a lack of discipline, a lack of boundaries. Maybe that's one way to redeem this, quote, redeem this in our study, to see it as this is just one more layer or one more issue of talking about a global punishment. Corporal punishment is one of them. This is one of them. We're going to see something similar, another case of debauchery. Maybe what we should do is also think of this whole section about debauchery and see if there's any, if it fits into something a little bit wider, if it addresses the point that Richard brought up, the good point about, what, when we talk about this, is there any wisdom in this for us? That's kind of the backstory. Okay.
Rabbi,
Yeah.
if you were raised in a closed society and from birth there was never exposure to debauchery, or you were disciplined in one way from birth and not exposed to others, in quotes, then there wouldn't be need for this warning.
Okay, but so that maybe that's a proof of the fact that there never is a vacuum. And also there is, so we're not talking about Methodists here or Mormons. We're talking about Jews and
Right.
Israelites, and wine was definitely part of the story. Wine is the story, and eating is part of the story. So unlike,
Okay.
say, heroin or
Right.
fentanyl, which are kind of specific if you're not exposed, and by the way, that happens as well. You have kids that grow up in ultra-Orthodox neighborhoods and culture and families that somehow are exposed to there's a crack in that that dome, that protective insulation. Okay, so I was for those that read the Hebrew, I was struck by the last two lines, ki sovev v'zolel yivarash yivaresh, sorry, yivaresh. The soveh and soveh v'zolel is reminiscent of the law, not reminiscent, it's the same language as of the law of the wayward son in Deuteronomy, that perhaps you remember. So, Dan, if I could ask you, just I didn't have room to bring the Hebrew as well. We just read the English here from Deuteronomy 21.
If a man has a wayward and defiant son who does not heed his father or mother and does not obey them even after they discipline him, his father and mother shall take hold of him and bring him out to the elders of his town at the public place of his community. They shall say to the elders of his town, "This son of ours is disloyal and defiant. He does not heed us. He is a glutton and a drunkard." Thereupon the people of his town shall stone him to death. Thus you will sweep out evil from your midst. All Israel will hear and be afraid.
But what the Deuteronomy translation has is glutton and drunkard is the same as guzzlers and gluttons in this. It's the same words in Hebrew. And I certainly think there's going to be a connection. Now, this is not like it's all over. It's not all over the Hebrew Bible. This particular pair of words. I'm sorry. I apologize. I need a moment.
Unusual. Perhaps Rabbi is disciplining one of his children.
That's funny.
No, Rabbi is being a good son and taking care of his mother's estate.
Oh, I thought you were out disciplining one of your children.
Yeah, there's a lot of things flying right now. Sorry, that's also why the study today it's not taking shorter in time, but it's less text. I'm having a hard time balancing everything right now. As you can see, we're at my mom's house, which is strange to be in this big house, just the two of us. And Okay, so
You didn't even let me share the elevator music.
oh, right, Dan, elevator music. Okay. And I wanted to make just a mention about that we opened our classes. We used to do all the classes, but just this class now with Craig Taubman's beautiful melody about Musar, Shema Beni Musar Avicha, the words from the beginning of the book, and just how fortunate we are to have the blessing of his music, that he's allowed us to use it for this purpose, but all of us, it's accessible to everybody on Spotify, even if you don't have any of the CDs, but just really, really some beautiful music. And then I think some of you know that he played at the funeral as well. He came to play. He and his wife Louise came on Sunday. My mother died in late afternoon, evening, I think, and he came earlier that day to sing. To sing with us at her bedside, and then he also accompanied Gabi, our daughter, at the funeral when she sang something. Yeah, we're very fortunate. Okay, so we've taken a look at this law in Deuteronomy before, and we all kind of say, really? You're going to kill the kid? You're going to stone the kid because he eats too much and he drinks too much? And and we ask ourselves, could this be our own tradition? Right? Is this you might want to say, is this this was what Jews do? And of course the answer is we don't do it anymore. The question will be, did we ever do it? And we've done this as a study before, but I brought one taste of this how early rabbinic source, so second, third century, maybe maybe a little earlier, Sifrei Dvarim on the second page, how it's called the Midrash Tanaim, the early Tanaitic Midrash, treated this. So the key here, Dan, as I think you'll probably figure out, is to go for the quotes. What they're doing, what the Midrash does here, as it does often, especially in Midrash Tanim, it chops down the verse into different phrases and expands each one. So let's pay attention to the expansions, and then we'll be able to talk about what the rabbis did, this rabbinic source did with this very challenging biblical source. Go ahead, Dan. Sifrei Dvarim.
And they shall say to the elders of the city, if one of them, either his father or his mother, had a severed hand, or were lame or mute or deaf or blind, he does not become a sorer mareh, it being written, and they shall seize him. And not if their hand was severed.
Okay, hold on.
I back. Yeah, okay, got it.
So let's take a break there. Yeah,
Yeah.
so there'll be a break in another 3 lines as well. So the Sorer Morer is the rebellious, unchecked and rebellious son. And so we ask ourselves, you say, what, the parents are going to bring them? So they're looking for, so it's not the case. Any parent who either has a severed limb or a severed hand can't do this, right? Or if they're blind or they're deaf or they're mute. In other words, we're going to see dissected now how they learn that from words, but basically what it's saying, that it can only be a case of a son who had competent parents who were able to discipline him. If they were physically challenged in this way, then we let them off the hook. We let the kid off the hook as well. Go ahead.
Okay, so break it down. And they shall seize him, and not if their hand was severed.
Okay.
And they shall take him out, and not if they were lame. And they shall say, and not if they were mute, this our son, and not if they were blind. Not heeding our voice, and not if they were deaf, in which case they could not hear his refusal to heed them.
Okay, so that's the first section, right? Parents of limited capacity, physical capacity, have nullified this whole law. Another aspect.
Okay. They warn him before 3 judges and administer stripes. If he reverted to his wrong, he is judged by 23. But he is not stoned unless there be among the first 3.
Unless there be among them the first 3.
Among them the first 3, it being written, this our son. Okay, I'm puzzled about the breakup now. I'm not sure.
Okay, so in order to, the first stage is that he gets whipped. and that's done in front of 3 judges. If that doesn't work, then he's brought between a wider court of 23 judges, but
You have to
only
include
if the original 3 are part of it. And now it's going to prove how it has to be those original 3 have to be part of it.
Okay, it being written, this our son who received stripes before you. Okay, so it's known it happened.
Okay.
Whereby we are taught that if one of them died, he is not stoned.
Right. So any of those 3, if one of those 3 judges are no longer with us, he's off. Go ahead.
Glutting and guzzling, glutting flesh and guzzling wine. Even if there's no proof for this, there's intimation of it in Proverbs. Do not be among the guzzlers of wine, among the glutters of flesh for themselves. And in the same, for the guzzler and the glutter will be poor, and the slumberer will wear tatters.
Okay, so in other words, the last section is limiting it. This whole section and lots of Tannaitic literature and Talmudic literature even more limits and limits and limits and limits the possibility of this even ever happening. In this case, the parents have to be physically capable of disciplining their son. Second is all 3 of the original judges have to be there and be alive. The next thing is, what do they get punished? What do you get punished for? The text says sovev v'zolel, no, solel v'soveh. It says that those 2 words, lizlol, is to drink. It's a little bit difficult because it comes from the root zol, zayin vav lamed, which means cheapened or not serious. But apparently it's connected to an Akkadian word that means to overdrink or something like that, overindulge. So how do we know that overindulging, which would be those 2 things, and not necessarily drinking, but overindulging, how do we know it has to do with wine and beef and meat? That's from that's from what we have in our own verses here. That's how we got to this particular source here. In rabbinic literature, it goes on and on. The Talmud finally gets to a situation where one of the Chachamim says to the others, if this is the case, how could we ever find a son, a misbehaving son like this to be guilty? And the answer by one of the rabbis is, you're right, it never was and it never will be. So then the rabbi says, Talmud asks, so then why are we studying this? And the answer is to receive reward for studying. The intellectual pursuit, the intellectual engagement of hypothetical cases, which we do all the time, right? People do models. It's not just about practicalities. It's also to improve our methodology and stuff. And so this is a really good example of something that's in the Torah, which was written out of the Torah in a eloquent or maybe not so eloquent way by the rabbis, without saying Moses never said it, God never said it, but by limiting the possibilities of that. There's probably other examples, but this is like the classical example of that. Yeah. In general, death penalties were limited in that way by the rabbis in the Talmud. You had to have two witnesses, not only that they saw it, but that they also said beforehand, if you do that, you're going to be put to death. And it's this impossible situation, which is their way of preserving the text as sacred, the letters of the law as sacred, without having to do them. And that's the essence of Judaism. That's what the rabbis are, the essence of at least my Judaism. And that's the essence of halakha, of Jewish law from my point of view. Jewish law, as many of you know, for me is not to know exactly what to do. Jewish law that I study and I have some expertise in is for me to ponder in the framework of the conversation what I'm going to do, what the community is going to do under my leadership. And, yeah. So anyway. So let's take just an example, though, of the rabbis. I love this one, and Anyway, this has to do with, in general, with the dangers of being intoxicated. Lest you think, what do you care? Somebody can drink and they'll lie in the gutter, and that's it. But here's something a little bit else from the Babylonian Talmud, and the context is reading the Megillah and celebrating Purim. Go ahead, Dan.
Rava said, a person is obligated to become intoxicated with wine and Purim until he's so intoxicated that he does not know how to distinguish between cursed is Haman and blessed is Mordecai.
Okay, that I mean, I think we've seen that before, right? And whether there was a hymn that said "cursed and blessed," whether he was drunk and he got mixed up, or a later interpretation. By the way, halachic authorities, especially in the pre-modern period, slowly limited this down as well. No, it doesn't really mean to get that drunk. Chofetz Chaim says in the Mishnah Berurah, so end of the 19th century, says, "Oh, it means that he should drink so that he's tired." And he goes to sleep, takes a nap on Purim, and when he's sleeping, he doesn't know the difference between Haman and Mordechai. It's one way of softening it. Yeah, go ahead.
Rabbah and Rabbi Ze'ira prepared a Purim feast with each other, and they became intoxicated to the point that Rabbah arose and slaughtered Rabbi Ze'ira. The next day, when he became sober and realized what he had done, Rabbah asked God for mercy and revived him. The next year, Rabbah said to Rabbi Ze'ira, "Let the master come and let us prepare the Purim feast with each other." He said to him, "Miracles do not happen each and every hour. I don't want to undergo that experience again."
Now tell me that's not a good story, right? Not one we expect in the Talmud. First about resurrection, like, whoa, where did that come from? Since when do we do that, right? Things that became general, miracles in biblical Hebrew Bible, also in the New Testament, in the Gospels. Okay. In any case, all around this issue of the danger of intoxication. Klaus, you up to read for reading? You just have to unmute first. Klaus, we need you to unmute.
Okay,
Or 22, 25. Go ahead.
listen to your father who begot you. Do not disdain your mother when she is old. Buy truth and never sell it, and wisdom, discipline, and understanding. The father of a righteous person will exult. He who begets a wise child will rejoice in them. Your father and mother will rejoice. She who bore you will exult.
Okay. Nothing new, right? But the tension between your father who begot you, that's nice, but how about the mother who carried you, right? And went through birth pangs to bring you into the world. And it's almost the speaker here remembers, oh yeah, of course I meant women as well, right? Of course I meant the mothers as well. That's what it feels like to me, this
I
afterthought.
think it's modeled a little bit after what is it, the fourth commandment or fifth commandment, honor thy father and mother.
Yeah, yeah. It's connected to that. And there's one version of that particular commandment in Leviticus that talks about the mother first, actually. Why don't you read the last one for us as well?
Give your mind to me, my son. Let your eyes watch my ways. A prostitute is a deep pit. A forbidden woman is a narrow well. She too lies in wait and if for prey, and destroys the unfaithful among men.
So another example of debauchery, in this case having to do with with the dangerous women of the world. Interesting word here, chetef. Chetef, not I think it might be a unique word here. Sorry, that's the connected to the Akkadian. I know what I said before about Zalal and Zol, the Akkadian, forget that. But it is, Zalal is connected to something being cheap and not heavy, not honorable. Let's see. Yeah, the imagery here of a deep pit and a narrow well. So going down, we might say in some way going down a rabbit hole. Okay. Anything else on these two sections? Okay.
I think the only thing that's changed is that we now include women in these things too, not just men.
Yeah. Well, in all fairness, there I'm guessing about a quarter of the times that the father, I'm just a rough guess, quarter of the times that parents are mentioned, women are involved. This is not the first time, right? But you are right in that it's mostly the men. Yeah, it's an androcentric, a man-centered world here. It's men speaking to men.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, thank you all for being here. We'll see some of you perhaps in person tomorrow at St. Paul. The announcement I started with is that we'll be starting a new group about the apocryphal book of Tobit, Tovia, in probably January, first week of January, first or second week of January. We're going to do a little ad campaign to get not only get the people together that have been in this particular group. It was Steve Kinney, these fellow people from Texas, some from the East Coast, but perhaps even widen the group even more by maybe we'll get the Jewish Federation involved in this as well. Next Thursday, there's a day of study at the Tolerance Museum. That I will be giving a lecture on that will include some of the artwork, the folk artwork from the Gross family collection. I'm doing it connected to the Torah portion on Rivka, Rebecca. Other rabbis from the desert, just two other rabbis I think are speaking, some other people as well. And they'll be showing the movie Sabbath Bride about Rabbi Amichai Lau and his 21, 22 years of documentation of his life as deciding to become a rabbi and being in New York, and the fact that he's the nephew and cousin of two chief rabbis of Israel. Okay, and this Friday evening is Kabbalat Shabbat, the Pride Kabbalat Shabbat at the Methodist Church at 6:30. Anyway, thanks for being here. See you soon.
Thank you.
Bye. Thank you, Mandolina.
You're welcome. Bye.